Hello everybody and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's style, we are drawing this stag in the forest. For this you will need to use the palette and the brush that I've added in the description. To install them, simply tap on the file you downloaded and open in Procreate, and you'll need that for the stag brush there as well as the palette. So first of all we need to create a new canvas, so we're going to press the plus icon in the top right hand corner. I'm going to press this plus icon here. And we're going to set our width and our height to 2500 by 2500. So let's get started by changing our background color. We're going to select the bottom left hand color here, which will be sort of our black. And then we're going to come to our layers. We are going to go to our brush library and we're going to select the Monoline Brush, which is under calligraphy. So we're just going to draw a circle. Don't worry about your brush size. Make sure it links at the top and then hold down and it will create an ellipse. And then if you pop your finger on the screen, it will create a perfect circle. And then grab your color and fill it in there. And we're just going to position this in the center like so. And for this design, we're going to start at the top of our design and make our way down. So we're going to create a few different layers now. I've created 4 and we're going to start on the top one here and make our way down the design. So we're just going to hold down on the screen and that will pick the color of the background. And then we're going to go to our brush library, keeping with the monoline. I'm going to drop it down to around about 10%. And we're going to get started with some land here. So we're just going to come across and then we're going to build up on this right hand side some sort of rocky part there. And what you're going to need to do is we'll grab where we stopped our line and just come all the way around outside of the shape and link it up at the other end so that we can drag our colour in. We're then going to go to our layers and we're going to select the layer below that. And we're going to get started on drawing some trees. And these trees are going to sit on this left hand side and also fit with the background colour as well. And then the rest of the design will sit in the background. So for this one, we are going to simply create some straight lines. Now I'm going to change my brush colour to something random so you can see what it is I'm doing. And then I'll show you what it is we need to do afterwards. So we're going to draw a straight line up. I'm going to hold my brush at the end. And then I'm also going to pop my finger on the screen, which will create a perfectly straight vertical line, and we're going to let go. And I'm going to do exactly the same beside it, roughly that width. And then I'm just going to link my ends up here. Don't worry about them being a little bit messy because we're going to end up hiding them. And then I'm going to drag my colour in. So you can see because we're layered underneath this one, while it's pink, you can see the other layer that we created. What we're going to quickly do before we go any further is we want all these layers to clip to the circle. So we're going to clip every single one that we created. So I created 4. So you just double tap on the layer and then select clipping mask, and you can see now that one will clip in, and likewise so will this one. Just means that all of our layers will be nice and neat and stay within the boundaries of the circle. So we're then going to duplicate the pink tree because we were going to have maybe 2 or 3 on this left hand side. And so it will save a little bit of time. I'm going to swipe that to the left and press duplicate. We're going to grab our cursor icon and drag this one into position. I'm actually going to go off to the left to start with, and this one's just going to sit around about here. I'm going to tap my cursor because I'm done with that one. We're going to go back to that layer and also swipe it to the left hand side again and duplicate it one more time. And then the same thing again, we're going to grab our cursor and drag this tree into position. Now for this one, we're actually going to click on freeform and we're going to make this one slightly bigger and drag it into position such as there. Now while our layers are pink, we're going to add in some small branches and also create some tree-like texture just on the sides, more of a rough line rather than the straight lines. This was just a guide to get started. So we're going to continue with our monoline brush. And on this tree layer here, the last one we created, I'll turn it on and off so you can see. We're going to continue on this layer and zooming in. We want obviously the tree trunk to be larger towards the bottom and it get chunkier at the top. So we're just create that first little swoop and then just squiggle all the way up to a certain point. And then likewise, as always, just link up your shape at the end and you'll be able to just drag and drop your colour in. You might get a little gap such as this one and just fill that in. And then we're going to do the same on the other side where you create a first like little swoop upwards, and then you can have the tree shape extend out if you wish. And again, we're just going to link up the end here and drag our colour in. And then we need to continue up the tree as well. I'm just going to create those squiggly lines. You don't want to go out too far because you don't want it to go wider than the base of the tree. And we're going to zoom in. I'm just going to paint in these smaller lines rather than fill them in. And we're going to do the same on this last side. I'm not going to go too squiggly on that side. Try and keep it a bit straighter. And now we've got a nice tree texture. Now we're going to do the same for the other two layers. So we are going to check which layer the next one is. It's this one on the left hand side. So we're going to come over to this one here. And we are just going to do exactly the same process. We don't need to create a swoop though, because the tree base, it will be hidden behind the edge of the circle here. So we can just create some very simple, just sort of squiggly texture. And then if we just link up at the top and bottom, drag our colour in, you can see we filled that in now. And then for the final tree, just turn it on and off so you can see quickly which one it is. We do the final bit of texturing on that one. So we're going to start with a swoop towards the bottom. I'm going to go a little bit wider to start with and a little bit higher. And you've then got to just link up your shape at the bottom and fill with the colour. And just continue up the tree if you haven't already. Like so. And then we'll do the final side here where we are going to go all the way up to around about there, link up our shape and drop in the colour. So now we've got our three trees and a bit of ground. The only thing we want to do now is just add some tree-like small branches that may have been cut off at the lower part of the tree. So we're just going to, on the layer for this tree here, which I think is the top one here, it is, we're going to go to that layer and we're just going to create some very small sort of nib style branches, and like so, like that sort of shape there. All of these trees will look different for everybody's design for this. It depends on how much detail with the sort of branches like this you want to add in, as well as how far out into the design you want to go. I'm just going to add two for the meantime, with one other one on this right hand side that's not going to go out too far because it's behind the tree, and drag my colour in every time. So we've got three little cut off branches there. We're going to do the same for the other two layers. This one on the left hand side though, we might just add the 1 to, because it's quite out of the frame. We don't want to also touch this tree. We want to give them some breathing space between one another. So just the 1 for that one. And then for the last tree, which is the middle one, we're going to do exactly the same and maybe add 1, maybe 2 to this one. And again, I'm just going to try and differentiate this one a little bit by making this one slightly longer than the others we've done, and drag in my colour into there. Now I'm pretty happy with that one. Now we can set the proper colours for the three trees, which is this black colour around the outside. So we're going to come to our palette, and it's this one in the bottom left hand corner. And on all of our trees, we'll turn them on and off so know which one we're dragging the colour into. I'm just going to drag the colour into that tree. We're going to do the same for the other two layers. So we can turn them on and off to see what tree it is, grab our colour and drop it in. And for the final one, we'll drag the colour in as well. So the only thing I want to do now is just add some little bit of grass-like texture to this little bit of ground that we created, just to change it up a little bit. So we're going to go to our brush and we're going to scroll down and we're going to select script. Now for this one, we're probably going to make it around about 7%. And on the same layer, all we're going to do is zoom in to this top right hand corner and just make some flicks. Now that's probably too small. You probably want to go around about 15% and just create some little random flicks of grass just to change it from the rest of the design. Also add some texture to the ground. Now I'm only going to add a few towards the top and a few towards the bottom here, just at the base of the tree. And for me, that's enough. We don't need to go too much further with that one. Now we're going to add in the color for the background and add in the different bits of light and also shade some of these trees with that lighting. So we're going to go to a layer just above the circle. So we should have a blank one. If you don't, I'll show you. You can just tap on the circle, add a new one, and it will automatically clip below these layers and also clip to the circle. So we're going to come to our palette and we're going to select this one in the top left hand corner. And we are going to grab the brush from the airbrush, the soft brush. And we're going to make that fairly large at around about 70% and just colour in the whole thing. We're then going to come to our colour palette and we're going to select the second colour. Because this is slightly lighter, we're going to drag our brush down to around about 30% and just in a circular motion create some lighter colour towards the top. And doing it in a circular motion lightly, you can build up the colour and eventually end up with a nice somewhat gradient here. So now we've done our background colour, I actually want to add in some trees that are going to be in the background, but we won't really see them too much. So we're going to add a new layer above the golden layer we created, but also below our trees. You'll notice for the majority of this design, every layer we create will always be clipped to this circle because we want our entire design to be contained within that circle. So on this layer here, we're going to select the brush from the library, which will use the script brush again. We're going to make it fairly large at this point to around about 76%. And we are going to select the colour of dark brown. So this colour in the middle here of our palette. Now these trees that we're going to create, we're actually going to blur out and we're just creating some levels of depth to the background. These trees are simply line streaks all the way up the screen that will end up being blurred out. So don't worry about if your design looks slightly different. We're just creating streaks up the page. Now you also want to make sure that they're thicker towards the bottom, that some of them as you go up the page will be thinner, some will be thicker, but you want to try and make sure that they're not too much thinner towards the bottom than they are at the top. So make sure to press harder at the beginning and sort of let go towards the end. Now I'm happy with that selection there. What we might do is also create some flicks across different trees, just randomly. Again, all of this is most likely going to be blurred out shortly. So we are just going to add branches out here. And we're just creating little flicks. The nice thing about this script brush is the lighter you press, you get nice thin lines, but the harder you press, you get nice thick lines. So we can really change up our branches like so. What we're now going to do is come to our adjustments icon and we are going to select Gaussian blur and we're going to select the layer variation. And we're just going to drag from left to right. The further you go from left to right, you go from 0 to 100%. Now we don't want to do anywhere near that. We just want to add a little bit of blur to that, which will sit around about the 10% mark. Just enough that you can clearly still make out that they're trees, but enough that their shapes have been blurred out enough. And then when you're done, simply tap on the adjustments to apply it. So now we've got some sort of background depth in there as well. You could, if you wanted to, lower the opacity down as well, which will just let more of the colour through. So if you drop it to 70%, you get a lot more of the gold through. So we're now going to create a new layer at the very top where we're going to add our stag in. So we are going to go to our brush library. If you installed the brush in the description, you'll have a new brush here. and you'll be able to tap on that and select it, which is a stag, and then set your brush size to around about 5%, and we're just going to tap in the middle of the screen and we will get our stag. And don't worry if you've placed it in the wrong position, we just grab our cursor and we're going to drag this stag down just so its feet are touching the ground layer we created and enough of it is in the center, and then tap on the cursor to let go. So we're now going to get started and add in some extra lighting that is breaking through the forest. So we're going to create a new layer above our brown trees layer. We're going to create a new one. We're then going to go to our brush library. We're going to select from the painting section the spectra brush, and we're going to make our brush slightly larger, around about the 14% mark. Let's check that. Let's go a little bit smaller and make it around about the 11. And what we're going to do is we're going to create some beams of light. So you want to pick a focal point somewhere like here, for example, to start your brush at consistently, and then drag a straight line, hold your brush at the end so you can get the angle you want as well as make a straight line. And we're just going to create 1, 2, and maybe a third, slightly at a different angle, like so. And what we're then going to do is go to our layers and we're going to select from the layer options something that will make it slightly lighter. Now the obvious choice here would be soft light, so we're going to stick with that one, and we're just going to drag it down ever so slightly to around about 90% on its opacity. And now we've got some nice beams of light making their way through the forest. What we now want to do is start adding some lighting to both the trees and the stag and the ground ever so slightly. So we are going to go and do this tree here first. So this is a new technique if you've been following along with my other tutorials that we've not done yet. Because this layer is clipped to the circle, we can't clip a layer to it. So we need to create a new layer above this tree, and just to double check it's the right one. We're then going to tap on this layer and we're going to go to the option select. Now what that's done is the program has selected all the pixels of the tree, and then we're going to go to the layer that we just created above it. We're going to tap on that and we're going to select mask, and by selecting mask we will mask this layer to the selected pixels below. So it's a way of clipping to something essentially if the layer has already been clipped to something else. So now this layer here has got a mask on. You can see that the white shape on the mask is actually the same shape as the tree, so anything in white we can still continue to paint. So on the layer here underneath the mask, we're going to go to our brushes, we're going to go to our light yellow option here, and continuing with the paintbrush, we're going to drop it down to around about 5%, and we are going to start shading this left hand side of the tree. Now if you've done the mask correctly, you won't be able to draw outside of the tree like so, but when you come into the tree you have done it correctly. So we're going to undo that with 2 fingers and we are going to continue our painting. So we're just doing this left hand edge of the tree. The only thing I would say is don't go up here because you'll reveal where the circle line is and it ruins the illusion of everything being cut out to this circle. So I tend to start from like anywhere like here, for example, and make my way down. So what we're going to actually do as well is drop the opacity down of this brush to 50%, and that's done with this second slider on the left hand side, because we want to build up the colour. We don't want it to be too harsh, but this brush will add it in quite heavily. So I'm going to start here and just come all the way down the edge of the tree. I'm going to start from the bottom on this particular section, link up to where I was, and we've got a nice very soft bit of lighting on that edge of that tree. We don't want it to be too harsh because the light's actually coming from behind it, but just enough to outline the edge here. And then I'm just going to continue to just build it up by either pressing slightly harder or continuing to go back over my little bits of highlight. And this brush is quite nice because eventually you should end up with a layered effect that will mimic a tree as well. You can see if I zoom in, now I've got 3 different layers of the highlight, which will mimic again the texture of a tree and its ununiformed bark. And then we're going to go to the other side and add in a similar style. So add in those highlights. Again, I'm avoiding going all the way to the bottom of the tree and avoiding going all the way to the top because I don't want to break that illusion of it being clipped to the circle. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Just going to build up 3 different layers. One maybe slightly wider on this one. Just pressing really lightly at this point, just to build up those colours. And then I'm going to zoom in again. You can see you want to zoom in and out because you want to make sure your brush is in the right position. Little trick here, if you've already noticed, you can see my brush and the outline of the painting I'm doing. If you want to turn that on, simply go to your cursor in the top left hand corner, go to preferences and turn on brush cursor. It will help with this painting, especially you'll be able to see where your paintbrush is with regards to the tree. And then for this last one, I'm going to go back in and do the much harder press right on the edge of the tree, just to bring that highlight in. The nice thing about this brush, again, it will mimic a lot of the tree's natural texture, and it does it in a sense it's nice and random, but not too much that you're not in control of it. So we're now going to do the same for the other 2 trees, and we are going to add a new layer above this one here, which is this one on the left hand side. And we're going to do the same thing because we need to only paint inside the boundaries of the tree. We're going to tap on it. We're going to select the select option, which you'll see all the lines on your screen around that tree now show areas that are not selected. I'm going to go to the new layer we created above it, tap on that one, and we want to mask this layer with the selection made, and we can continue to paint. And when you're done, simply tap on the select at the top, and our layer now should be good to use, and do exactly the same process. 3 brush strokes up. Like so. I'm just going to add some extra highlight there. And that's tree number 2 done, and we're going to finish up with tree number 3. So we're going to create again a new layer above this tree. We're going to tap on this layer and we're going to select the select option. And I'm going to go to the layer above and tap on it and select mask. And you should see that layer now fill in black and have a white tree area which you can fill in, and we're going to tap on the select to select our layer. So we're now going to do exactly the same process for this tree too. 3 different strokes of lighting. Like so. Get my last one in at the bottom here. And the same for the other edge, but we don't want to go too heavy on this edge. Most of the lighting will be on the right hand side. Again, the nice thing about this brush, if you do it slightly shaky, you probably get a better effect to mimic the tree. And from here, if I zoom in, it looks really good. We've got sort of the 3D effect of the tree and how it blends round either way. The only thing I'm going to do is, and if you've done the same, we can see that there's a little bit of bleeding towards the edge here. So I'm just going to erase some of that by going to my eraser, selecting the airbrush and the soft brush, make my brush kind of small, and just circular motion, just fade that out because I don't want it to touch the edge top and bottom. If you do, you can skip this step, but towards the bottom too, I think there was a little bit just there. And like so. We're going to do a similar effect as well now, to a little bit of the ground, not too much, and a little bit of the stag as well. So we're going to go to our stag. There is also another option. Rather than create the selects and the masks, we could tap on the stag and select the option of alpha lock. Now that would also mean that we could paint anywhere, but it has to be within inside the stag, and it won't affect anywhere else. Personally, I don't like that, because with adding the extra layer above, you still leave your original layer clean, unedited, and if you need to go in at any time and change that, you can. But for this one, I'll show the extra effect of, we've tapped on the deer or the stag, and we've turned on the option of alpha lock, and you'll see the little grey boxes appear around the stag. Now, because of the direction we've added the lighting, we only want the lighting to hit the top edge here, as well as the outer edge of the antlers towards the top. We don't really want to touch this right hand side. And for the stag, we are going to keep our brush exactly the same, and just add a little bit of something on its back and the back of its neck. I'm continuing to not let go at this point, just to fill out the shape. And just two layers I've done there, just to add a little bit of lighting to its back. I might do a third just for extra colour, like so. So if I zoom in, you can see I kind of created that curved shape here to go along with the body, and then just slightly up the back of the neck. And we're going to zoom in, lower our brush size to around about 2%, and do exactly the same thing on the back of the ear here, something like that. And the same for the antlers as well, just on anywhere that the light would potentially hit, just adding a little bit there. And on this outer edge especially, we want to add some lighting, like so. And we'll do the same over here, and continue to make our way around. Now, you could spend some extra time here if you wanted to, going in and add, much brighter highlights, but personally I'm pretty happy with that design. The only thing we're now going to do is add the same sort of lighting to the floor here. So we're going to go to our layers, we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to, for this one, have to create the layer mask. So we're going to make sure first of all that this layer is also clipped to the circle. We're going to tap on our ground layer and select the option select. I'm going to go to our layers, we're going to select the one that we just created, tap on that and select mask. So now this layer is masked the same shape as the one below, and we're going to tap on select to complete that. So from here, we're going to make our brush size the same brush as before, because we want it to be consistent with the lighting effects throughout the whole thing. And I've gone up to around about 8%, and I'm just gonna, that's probably too big to be honest, we're gonna drop it down to 4. I'm just gonna brush from left to right, following the direction of the beams of light, essentially. Just create some sort of strokes on the ground, like so. Now, I don't want to go too close to the deer or stag's feet, because there will be shadows in there. The only thing you want to maybe do is just add some inside the gaps of the stag. The problem with that is you will reveal the feet, so you don't want to add too much. You could really add some big shadows and highlights in here, but we're not going to do that in this tutorial. I'm just adding little bits in the gaps between the stag's feet. Drop that brush size back down to 5%, and just build up some shadows like so, and highlights. I'm just going to add some much brighter points up here where the light beams that we created are directly landing on the ground, so just add in some extra colour right towards the edge of the ground, and likewise we can maybe add some here as well. And if we zoom out with 2 fingers, we've now got our completed design. So thank you for following along. If you have from start to finish, please feel free to tag me in your creations on Instagram. If you share them to your story and tag me, I will post them to my story. If you're not already following my TikTok, the link is also in the description. And if you could drop a like and a comment below if you managed to follow along from start to finish, that would be greatly appreciated. They'll be underneath that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.